They jailed a Latino war veteran. Then a colonel stood and saluted him in court as the crowd watched in awe. "You have no idea who that man is." That's what the woman whispered behind me, and I swear, something in her voice made the whole courtroom go still. No one moved. No one breathed. Not even the judge. Because standing in front of us, hands cuffed, ankles shackled, was Sergeant Luis Camacho, the man who, 5 years ago, dragged 3 of his guys out of a burning Humvee in Fallujah. Burned up half his back doing it. They gave him a medal, a ceremony, a handshake from the president. And now he was standing there like a criminal, like some nobody off the street. People were confused. I mean, the moment they brought him in, wearing that wrinkled orange jumpsuit, I heard someone actually gasp, like a real, honest gasp. The kind you hear when something just doesn't make sense. Luis didn't say a word. He just stood there, tall, still, like he'd been through worse. And we all knew he had. It was the kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful, it feels tense, like something's about to snap. And then the door at the back creaked open, slowly. And this man walked in, older guy, bald, tight uniform, rows of ribbons on his chest. He didn't sit, didn't look around. Just walked forward, past everyone, and stopped right in front of Luis. Then he did something none of us were ready for. He saluted. Just like that. Sharp, crisp, a full, proper military salute. I swear. For a second, I thought the air left the room. Even the judge didn't say anything. No gavel. No order in the court. Nothing. Because how do you follow that? The salute hung in the air like a flag caught in no wind. Luis didn't flinch, didn't blink. He just looked the man in the eyes and gave a slow, respectful nod. Not a return salute. He couldn't, not with his hands cuffed. But that nod, that was louder than words. People started whispering, not gossip, questions. Who is that guy? That's Colonel Briggs. Retired. He commanded the 3rd Battalion. Wait, his colonel? Yeah. Camacho saved his life. The judge finally cleared her throat, but even she didn't sound convinced. This is highly irregular. Briggs didn't move. He didn't even glance at her. His voice was low, steady, and cut through the room like steel on stone. Your Honor, I understand this court has a job to do, but so do I. And mine is to speak truth about a man who did more for this country than most of us ever will. Luis shifted slightly, just slightly. Not pride, restraint. Like he didn't want this. Like attention was heavier than the chains around his wrists. The prosecutor, a young man in a tailored suit, stood up. Colonel, with respect, Mr. Camacho is facing charges of assault and destruction of property. Briggs turned to him, calm, calculated. And how many times did he call for help before that night? Silence. I read the reports. VA ignored him. Housing fell through. No therapy. No support. You corner a man who's already given everything, and then blame him when he snaps? The judge didn't interrupt. She looked down, lips pressed thin, tapping her pen once against the desk. It wasn't just a courtroom anymore. It was a reckoning. Outside, you could hear the wind picking up, like the world knew something was shifting inside. Because it was. Luis finally spoke. His voice was quiet, but it filled the room like thunder rolling in from far away. I'm not proud of what I did. I broke a window, yelled at a caseworker, lost control. That's on me. He looked straight at the judge. No trembling, no excuses. But don't confuse a man asking for help with a man causing trouble. I didn't want to fight anyone. I just wanted to be seen. that hit people. You could feel the shift. The jury, the clerk, the court officers. They weren't looking at a defendant anymore. They were looking at a man who'd come home from war and found nothing waiting for him but an empty apartment and unanswered calls. Colonel Briggs stepped aside then. Not out of shame, out of respect. Like his part was done. And now it was ours. The judge took off her glasses, rubbed her eyes, then looked up, softer now. Mr. Camacho, the law says what it says. But justice, real justice, takes more than just reading a file. She paused. 2 months probation. Mandatory therapy sessions. No jail time. Dismissed. Gasps again. But different this time. Luis blinked once. Just once. Then turned to Briggs and said, "Thank you, sir." Briggs gave a nod. Quiet, like soldiers do when the words don't fit the moment. And then something remarkable happened. The bailiff, an old guy, crusty, no nonsense, uncuffed Luis right there at the defense table. Didn't wait for protocol. Didn't ask permission. Just did it. Because sometimes humanity outranks procedure. And when Luis stood up, rubbing his wrists, the courtroom didn't erupt. It rose. People stood. Slowly, one by one. No clapping, no shouting. Just silent, unanimous respect. You don't see moments like that often. But when you do, they stay with you. Forever. Outside the courthouse, the sky had shifted. Gray clouds rolled low and slow, like even the weather was holding its breath. Luis stepped out first, blinking at the sudden openness. The kind of freedom you don't really feel until you've had it almost taken away. People were waiting. Not press, not politicians, just people. Neighbors, strangers, a few vets in old jackets with patches faded by time and rain. One of them, a guy missing his right leg, leaned on a cane and nodded toward Luis. Welcome home. For real this time. Luis didn't smile. Not out of coldness, just wait. A man doesn't return from war the same way he left. And sometimes, the fight doesn't end when the shooting stops. Briggs stood beside him, silent as ever. And then someone handed Luis a small item wrapped in cloth. He opened it slowly. It was his medal, the one that had been lost in the system after he'd been discharged. There it was again, gleaming like the day it was first pinned on, as if the universe was trying to return something that had been stolen. Luis looked at it for a long time, then closed his hand around it, not to show it, to feel it. A reporter finally asked the question everyone else was too afraid to. "Sergeant Camacho, what happens now?" Luis looked past them all, at the courthouse, at the people, at the storm beginning to gather above the buildings. "I don't know," he said. "But this time, I am not walking through it alone." And somehow, that was enough. The cameras lowered, the questions stopped. Because some stories aren't about clean endings. They're about standing back up, even when no one's clapping, even when the world doesn't notice, and especially when it does. The storm finally broke that night. Rain came down hard, thick, relentless, like the sky was trying to wash something off the city. Luis sat on a worn bench at the edge of the park. Same boots he'd worn in court. Same silence. The medal was in his pocket, heavy in a way no one else could feel. Colonel Briggs sat beside him. No words, just presence. They watched a group of kids play in the rain, laughing, slipping, uncaring. The kind of freedom you forget exists when you've been trained to always watch your six. Luis finally spoke. "I thought if I made it back alive, everything would make sense again." Briggs didn't answer right away. Then, "It rarely does." Luis looked down at his hands. Scarred, steady, but not the same hands that once held a rifle in a sandstorm or patched a friend's chest wound under enemy fire. Sometimes I think I left the best version of me out there. Briggs nodded slowly. Then bring him back. Luis looked over, eyes narrowed. How? Briggs looked at the kids in the rain. Start small, one act, one day. Help someone, speak up, sit down, show up. Doesn't matter. Just don't disappear. Luis didn't answer, but he didn't look away either. The rain softened. A young woman in a hoodie walked past, noticed the two men, and paused. Then she turned back and offered a small paper cup. Coffee, from the shelter down the block, on the house. Luis took it. It was warm, real, simple. He gave a quiet thanks. The woman nodded and kept walking. And Luis smiled, just barely. But it was there, the kind of smile that doesn't shout, but whispers. Still here, still trying. And in the city that forgot him, in the world that nearly let him fall, that whisper was loud enough.